Member for Warren Blackwood.
Acting Speaker. So I also rise in support of this motion that this House condemns the Cook Labor government for failing in their commitment to ensuring every West Australian has a home. The motion before the House today uses the Labor government's own words, not ours, theirs. Minister for Housing told this Parliament and the people of Western Australia that this government was laser focused on ensuring every West Australian has a home. The Premier went further. He said his government was working to ensure every West Australian has the security a home provides. Those are not the opposition's words. They are this government's words, and they are the standard by which this government must now be judged. This week, the Labor government announced a $692 million regional housing package. 7 regional cities were named. But then again, there was nothing for Warren Blackwood. So I put this plainly, if the government is laser focused on ensuring every West Australian has a home, how does a region with a rental vacancy below 1%, population growth of more than 8,400 people and a social housing rate at half the regional average get left out entirely? That is the question at the heart of this motion, and that is the question I would like answered. Acting Speaker, the reality in Western Blackwood is not theoretical, it is immediate, it is visible and it is getting worse. We need every single one of the government's, we meet every single one of the government's own criteria. Our rental vacancy is below 1%. There is virtually nothing available for families or workers trying to move into that area. To put that in perspective, Broome, one of the 7 cities named, sits at around 3%. We are 3 times worse off by that measure and we receive nothing. Our population has grown by more than 8,400 people since 2016, placing increasing pressure on an already constrained market. Our social housing rate sits at around half the regional average, meaning that there is a less of a safety net for those who need it most. In places like Margaret River, the rental market is at breaking point. People are competing for a handful of properties, often without success. In Bridgetown and Denmark, availability is so low that even essential workers are struggling to secure accommodation. This is not a future challenge, it is happening right now, in real time and across our communities. And yet not a single home from this $692 million program will be built in Warren Blackwood. This government has made repeated and unambiguous commitments on housing, but let me place some on the record. In announcing the housing investment, the Labor government said West Australia's booming economy and growing population has put pressure on our housing market, which is why the Labor government is laser focused on ensuring every West Australian has a home. In June 2025, announcing election commitments delivered, the Cook Labor government said it would accelerate housing supply to ensure every West Australian has access to a secure home. Those are clear commitments. They use the word every and not most. Not 7 cities, the word every. But when a region like Warren Blackwood is completely overlooked, those words do not align with reality. Because every West Australia must include families in Manjimup, Margaret River, Bridgetown, Pemberton, Denmark, Boyatbrook and Northcliffe. And a government that is laser focused on housing should not be leaving out entire regions of the $692 million announcement. If the language means something, then funding must follow. If it does not follow, the language means nothing. Acting Speaker, Warren Blackwood is not standing still. Our communities are contributing strongly to the state's economy every single day. We're driving tourism growth, supporting agriculture and forestry, and providing the backbone for many regional industries that West Australia depends on. Local businesses are expanding, visitor numbers are increasing, communities are growing, but housing has not kept pace. And when it comes to providing homes for essential workers, police, nurses, teachers, those same communities are being asked to wait. They're being told that despite their contribution, they are not part of the priority. That is not about asking for more. That is not about asking for more than others. It is about asking for a fair share. This announcement does not exist in isolation. It reflects a longer-term pattern of underinvestment in regional housing. Over the past decade, Grow Housing has seen a net increase of just 78 homes across the entire state of West Australia. That's 78 homes over 10 years is not enough to meet growing demand, and is not enough to support expanding communities, and it's certainly not enough to address the challenges like we are facing now. And when you combine that level of underinvestment with selective funding announcements that exclude high-need regions, the result is exactly what we are seeing today: a system under strain and communities being left behind. Even in situations where people are ready and willing to build, the system is making it harder. Instead of enabling development, we are seeing increased complexity, delay and inconsistency, particularly through the application of bushfire attack levels or BEL ratings. I've been contacted by multiple constituents experiencing these challenges firsthand. In Bridgetown, a fully serviced R20 property has been given a BEL flame zone rating based on a smaller number of trees being labelled as a forest. That outcome is severe. The land cannot be subdivided, even a basic boundary realignment is prevented. A practical, straightforward development opportunity is effectively shut down. At the same time, in areas like Quinnannup, which are surrounded by dense forests and face genuine bushfire risk, the broader landscape is not being reflected consistently in the same way. This raises serious concerns about how these assessments are being applied and whether they are achieving the balance between safety and practicality that communities expect. The additional costs of complying with BEL requirements is proving too great a burden for many homeowners. We're now seeing people walk away from projects they were ready to build because the financial impacts makes them unviable. There is no consistency in how these ratings are assessed, and that inconsistency is proving to be a hurdle that's simply too high and too many for homeowners to complete. Acting Speaker, the concerns being raised are not isolated issues. They point to systemic issues in how planning frameworks are operating. Definitions of vegetation appears to be applied too broadly. Comparable areas are being treated differently. Decision-making lacks transparency and in many cases lacks common sense. When landowners try to engage with the system, they are met with barriers. They are told applications are likely to be refused before they are even lodged. They refer between agencies without resolution, and promised follow-ups never occur. The result is frustration, uncertainty and in many cases financial impact. This is not a system that supports housing delivery. It is a system that slows it down or stops it altogether. And housing supply is not just about planning approvals, it is also about infrastructure. Towns like Northcliffe, Nannup and Pemberton, there has been a clear lack of investment in infrastructure needed to support growth. Water, power and servicing constraints continue to limit what can be developed. Even where land is available, it cannot be unlocked efficiently. Even when there is demand, it cannot be met. Without targeted investment in enabling infrastructure, housing policy alone will never deliver results. The impact of all this is being felt every day across Warren Blackwood. Families are struggling to find stable accommodation. Workers are turning down jobs because they cannot secure housing, and businesses are scaling back operations because they cannot attract staff. Essential services are under pressure, not because there is a lack of demand, but because there is a lack of housing for people needed to deliver them. This is the real-world consequences of policy decisions. These are not every West Australians who have a home. These are West Australians who have been forgotten by a government that promises them otherwise. The Premier needs to answer a very simple question. Why is Warren Blackwood being left out? Because based on the government's own criteria, we qualify. Based on the evidence from our communities, we clearly need support, and based on any reasonable understanding of what every West Australian means, we should not have been excluded. The government cannot claim to be laser focused on every West Australian having a home while excluding regions that need support. Those two positions cannot coexist. The path forward is clear. The government must provide transparency around how the 7 cities were selected. It must ensure the future funding allocations include regions like Warren Blackwood and demonstrate clear need. It must be address inconsistency in BEL assessments and ensure that planning frameworks are applied in a way that is fair, transparent and practical. And it must invest in the infrastructure required to unlock housing supply in towns like Northcliffe, Nannup and Pemberton. Acting Speaker, the Cook Labor government is laser focused on ensuring every West Australian has a home. They said every West Australian deserves the security a home provides. People took those commitments seriously. The people of Warren Blackwood took those commitments seriously. But right now, in Warren Blackwood, the message coming through loud and clear is this: we meet the criteria, we have the need, we are doing the work, but we've been left behind, we have been forgotten, and that is why I support this motion.
Thank you. Member for Member for Geraldton.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. I too